I would walk into the classroom on the first day and I would say, what is the fundamental purpose? What is the primary purpose of the graphic designer, right? Given that these were seniors, they had been trained very well, they would raise their hand and their response was more often than not to communicate effectively. And I would say, wrong! I would say, make shit look good, right? Make shit look good, right? Make shit look
good.
Feed.
Kiana.
Emily.
Aaron.
Daniel.
So what we're talking about is we're talking about the tip of the iceberg. If we unpack those ideas, it's as if that simple shorthand unpacks, becomes a much more complex set of ideas. So truly, the primary task of the graphic designer is not to communicate effectively, but it is to make shit look good. And we could talk about post-structuralism as an example, we could talk about semiotics, but ultimately, students are being mistrained when they think that the fundamental activity of graphic design is to communicate effectively.
You got the answer wrong. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's okay.
Oh, shit. So this was Friday night chopping it up with the grad students in the studio. In the last episode, I spoke about how we learn best when we're part of a culture and that we can't learn effectively in a vacuum. I also talked about how if you're not part of a culture, make one. As the mentor and primary teacher to 15 grad students, it's my responsibility to make a culture, and it's your teacher's responsibility to make a culture. And further, it's your responsibility to make a culture. This is Sartre's Existence Precedes Essence, another theme from a few episodes back now. If you want to learn and you're not part of a culture, it's your fault. Now fix it. In these episodes, I am going to try to show many of the ideas that I've been discussing across this channel and how they manifest in actual work, so that I'm not the typical academic wanker. Early this week, I collaborated with Henry on this print here. Print. And this is a 3-color screen print. And basically what it is it's one of the characters that I make over and over, and then Henry did the drawing, and so I screen printed it, and it's yet another print drop. And I was talking to you about the fact that, I want perfect prints, but people, I think they like the hand-based components of the.
Yeah, and when I do it too, I feel like I'm the only one who catches it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A recurrent theme in many art and design schools for the past couple of years is a militant, nearly fundamentalist opposition to capitalism and the commodification of the work of art. You see this both in what's being explicitly taught, as well as the forms of art and design that are being made. I can't be more clear about this. This entire discourse is an exercise in stupidity and a form of educational malpractice. As a good friend of mine has said to me repeatedly, dogs work for treats. Now, in their quiet moments of disarming honesty, I do not know one artist who does not want the ability to sustain themselves from their work. This does not mean that late-stage capitalism is not predatory. What it means is that there are degrees, and that it is possible to make art and design ethically and to be able to sustain yourself from that practice. What follows is a very brief discussion of some related issues. So one of the things that I don't really advertise, although it might be out now, and I might stop doing it, is that when I sell work, when I drop prints or when I sell broadsheets, I don't sell 1,000 usually in an edition, and so therefore I really want to provide value to the people that purchase my work. It's something that I really care about these pieces and make them by hand, and I think that anyone that wants to participate in it, that I try to write or write a hand-drawn, give a hand-drawn note to people. And so, Aaron, if it was you as an example, what I would be doing anytime anyone gets a piece, what I would do is I write your name, right? And then I would do a drawing, typically like something like this. And this kind of drawing that I've been doing for close to 30 years. And they are really things that I'm not really, I'm just letting kind of flow from memory.
Is it always the same or different?
No, it's pretty much, it's more or less this character or some variation of this character, but each one is different. And what I would do is usually I put something like this. And then, and I have been making work like this under a brand called Mad King for close to 30 years, which I read this book on kanji pictographics. And one of my students from China made me this stamp. And so what I do is I stamp it with Mad King. So the Mad King is the brand that I have been making drawings under, and that says Mad King in Chinese. And then I use this stamp like this.
You don't need to wet the paper?
No, and
Wow.
you can look at that. And so that's kind of a certificate of authenticity, and actually to some degree, and I don't really advertise this, but until I'm dropping 2,000 prints a month or something, when I sell stuff, I think the drawings generally are worth more than
The print.
the drawings are worth more than the print, and it really goes back to this idea that there's a very anti-capitalist bent for very good reasons within art school, and I think that there's a way to operate within the capitalist system that makes sense, and it's about trying not to exploit people. Like, I pull the prints myself, and I don't have graduate students do it for me for $9 and then sell them for thousands. And of course, we can talk about the exploitation that might be present in the supply chain, but I don't want to live on my mom's couch. I want to drive a nice car, and I want to provide real value to people that want to participate in my work. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make products like those prints. I don't really even give a shit whether those prints sell, right? I love them, and so if they sell, then I'm always trying to figure out ways to kind of make sure that there's actual value in the pieces. Of course, until I start selling 3,000 prints a month, I won't be doing 3,000 hand drawings.
You have grad students do it?
Right. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, so what I'm going to do for the mono prints that we're talking about, I cut. So Friday night sharing working process with members of the studio. It's my strong belief that any teacher's authority, yes, authority, flows directly from their work. No work, no capacity to reach students. Academic wanking, speculating upon shit that you possess zero capacity to do is the default position in most educational systems and is the wrong way to teach. So what we're going to see next is me teaching, showing my homies how to make a monoprint. In this process, I talk a lot about speed. I talk a lot about how ideas are generated, and how speed can be an artistic asset. Now, as a mentor, I actively encourage my students to look very carefully at whether the words that come out of my mouth correlate with the actual things that I make. I believe that if they can see through me and they see a blowhard and a wanker, they should switch off and stop listening to me. Do they see evidence of the principles that I discuss in my actual work aside from the language? I did a laser cut of a just a outline that was all nearly random. And I'm going to use that on top of. Is that actually recording? Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. I just stopped it. But so what I have here is I have. Still going? Yeah. So what I have here is I have a screen with a mask that has been burned into it, and I'm going to use this laser cut outline that, to some degree, is a kind of interpretation of this drawing. Sorry. I didn't mean to pull that out of your hand so hard. It's anytime the camera goes on, it becomes extremely performative, even when you've done it a while. We've talked about this. And so what I'm using is, and I'm not good with the French, but the caran-d'arche. Yeah, exactly. Water pastels, water-soluble pastels. And I'm going to flip the screen over and literally draw on. Use this as a template to draw on the screen. Any questions, comments, concerns while we're doing this would be great.
So you're just going to draw directly on the screen?
Yeah, draw on the screen itself because it's a water-soluble pigment.
So what would be the difference from this than like doing a screen print?
That's a great question, and I ask myself that over and over. I think that the issue is that it's a monoprint, so you get each print that you pull from the piece is much different than what you get from a screen print itself. To a degree, building in scarcity. And then you would ask the question of why do you not just simply do a drawing on handmade paper? Why wouldn't you do that instead? And that is a totally legitimate question, which we'll see in a moment. We'll see that. Is that still recording? Yeah, right. It's okay if it isn't. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of juice, but okay. So I'm excited that again this episode is sponsored by the great people at Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustle to the next level. This screen printing fundamentals class, led by Eric Romanchin, I think is a great way to get up to speed on a lot of the fundamentals that are seen in this episode. The mono printing that I'm showing is a form of screen printing. I genuinely believe that you have to take responsibility for your education, and Skillshare could play a big part in that process. The first 500 people to use my link that's in the description below will receive a 1-month free trial for Skillshare, so get started today. Now, the great part about Skillshare, as I see it, and Skillshare's offer, is that the first month's free, so this really does represent zero risk to you, and I think it's a good opportunity to put into practice a lot of what I talk about on this channel.
Do you think there's also something to it, like the speed of the work, that like it's already sort of done, and like the humidity, it's unadjusted, it fell off the wall, but now like instead of like going back, you're just gonna keep moving forward? Or
one of the things I talk about in the studio a lot is speed, specifically how there are modal ways of making and thinking. Some modes demand speed, some modes demand patience. In the conversation we had in the studio, We talked about how visual essays like my YouTube episodes seem to demand logic and clarity and are slow, while the monoprint that we're making in this episode is about speed and is about fluidity and intuition and about feel. This kind of work is built on a history. My entire life I've tried to literally work on the speed of, like, I could feel how I think, right? And it sounds ridiculous, but like I've tried to get things to move faster. And so the way that I'm working currently, right, as an example, the way that I'm working where I'm not overthinking it and I'm working like this, I find that there are these periods of absolutely massive productivity that I have if I can get things to just move as quickly as possible. Part of the downside to that, right? Part of the downside to that is the notion that you're also punished by it. So this is transparent, transparent medium or base. And what I do is I use the squeegee to find exactly like how much I need, and then I'm going to do a flood stroke first. And the flood stroke is basically where you keep the squeegee at a really acute angle like this, and then pull very lightly. Put the squeegee at a 45-degree angle and pull as hard as you can. And there it is. Ooh, and we're going to do another. You can see here, we're going to do another. All right, so to be clear about what's going on here, I'm drawing directly on the screen with Caran d'Ache water-soluble pastels. These things are incredibly beautiful with ridiculously rich pigment. And then I'm using a flood stroke to coat the screen with transparent extender base. I then wait 1 minute in order to fully saturate the pastels. I then pull a print, and I repeatedly flood stroke with no pause and pull successive prints. Each print changes, looks very different from the previous print, and gets lighter. With this method, I can get about 5 or 6 unique prints from a drawing. Each of these prints has its own unique unplanned character. You'll now see how we use a small engraving press with the same laser cut template to blind emboss the print. So blind embossing is where you dimensionalize the print, adding the shape of the template as if it's a three-dimensional object. Now this is going to work perfectly with the sacrificial paper. Oh yeah, right. Did it or not? No.
Well,
Kind of.
a little better.
Better, although the embossing is not as
Tight.
yeah. Anyway, it's an experiment. It's an experiment. So let's go back to the studio real quick. At the beginning of this episode, I talked about how important I believe it is for artists to be able to sustain themselves off of their studio practice. These are recurrent issues that we discuss here in the studio. Now, with that in mind, this monoprint from the episode is available with a note addressed to you. It's $225. It ships signature required and fully insured, and there is a link in the description below.
Is it like a putty?
It's ink, actually, and then I've got it marked top because I don't read Chinese. I do read it. I know I'm familiar enough with it in the kanji logo that I have it. And there we go, Mad King, and then we'll stamp it, and then we'll put it on. We'll drop this as a, it'll be upside down. And that's on there. And then, where'd that go? Where did the drawing go? Somewhere. Oh, here. Yeah, these two go together. Although it was Aaron's name on it. Sorry, Aaron. I was already your name. You know what, Aaron? Yeah, this one's for you.
Oh, you won.